All right, says live. It'll take Deb, my best half. She's going to share it out to the GBR page.
All right.
And just give a few seconds, maybe a minute, to let people come in and stuff before we start. Just let me say again, thank you for doing this. It's been a while. Kind of forgotten about it, but not really. I just
God didn't forget, because he put it on my heart a few weeks ago in a most unusual way. So.
Well, we could talk about that. Could be covered too. Exactly how that came about. I was kind of wondering, but I think I asked maybe once or twice in the last year, and just he was like, "No, not ready yet," and I respect that. And then he popped up one day, and I was like, I went to Deb. I'm like, "Am I reading this right? It's really cool." Not that I ever doubted you would do it, but it was just like, if it happens, it happens type of thing. I was so excited. So. You've been with GBR from the beginning, a big supporter, and we just all love you, and we're in your corner and pray for you a lot.
You guys too.
We feel like you've been with us from the first week or two. So thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
Everybody's coming in,
having me and being patient.
Oh yeah, no problem. It's my pleasure. Let me say this to everybody that's coming in. This is on the spot. This is Miss Abigail Crandell. I call her Ambassador Abby. She's been with GBR, God-Based Recovery, for almost the whole time since we started. It was early on, and always supportive, always encouraging people. And she's this way with a lot of groups. I think that's really the way to be. I dig that. And she's either decided to give her testimony tonight or kind of was nudged to, or maybe a little bit of both. We'll hear about how this really came about. Asked her to do it about a year and a half ago. Wasn't time yet, so just kind of went about my business and stuff. And Abigail, I think, reached out about a month ago and said, "Hey, I'm ready to do this." I'm like, "Okay, cool, let's do it." So here we are tonight. We're glad to have her. She's one of the coolest and nicest and faith-filled people I've had the pleasure of meeting in this last 2 years. So you will be hearing her story tonight. Let me say this to people that's coming in now. I kind of probably will be doing this to every on the spot, regardless of who the guest is. Every on the spot guest has to, in my opinion, tell their story as it is, because God knows every detail. He knows exactly what you are putting yourself through, your family, your friends. He knows exactly what he pulled you through. God is in the details, in my opinion. And, there's a lot of really intense, powerful things that get talked about. And I think that everybody needs to go through it at their own pace as much as they can, but not water anything down and leave a bunch of stuff out, like not just the headlines. But at the same time, you might hear something tonight that you're not healed from, you're still maybe struggling with, or it just hits home with you a little bit too much. It might cause some emotions to rise, and you might feel like leaving the broadcast. If that's the case, please drop a comment in the comment section so somebody from God-Based Recovery can reach out to you possibly. I love doing these. I think it's part of my purpose. I can speak for my guests when I say, hey, this is something we're obligated, I feel, to do, but at the expense of possibly triggering somebody or causing a relapse or something worse. We don't wish that upon anybody. We wouldn't want to do this if that was the case. But at the same time, we have to tell these stories as they are. So I at least want to put that out there for anybody who might hear something that's just a little bit too personal, and has to leave a comment so somebody from the GBR team can reach out to you. And we'll get this started as soon as I pray us in. I always offer the guest to pray us out. This is On the Spot with Abigail Crandell. If everybody would join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, I give you all the praise, all the glory, Lord. You're the great narrator and storyteller of everyone's lives, Lord. You could rewrite them in an instant. When somebody thinks the story's over, here you are with another page, another piece of paper, writing another book. You write miraculous scenes and stories. And I feel Abigail's is another one of those beautiful, powerful, intense Somewhat tragic, but beautiful stories, because you get the glory for where she's at today, how she's feeling today, a heart filled with faith and a fire burning for you. Thank you for bringing her in here tonight. Thank you for giving her the courage and the confidence, although it may be vulnerable at times, to take us through this story, to hear exactly what you pulled her through, Lord, what you were always there for her through. I just ask that you guide her words tonight, calm her heart, Lord. Let her words resonate with at least one person that's going to be watching this tonight, or maybe tomorrow, or a month or two down the road, Lord. It's all up to you with that, how you want this to reach people. Please be with her and her family and Michael, everybody that she loves and cares about, her friends, everybody that's going to be watching this live or later on. Please just keep guiding them, protecting them, and loving their families. And I just thank you for everything that you've ever done in my life, do on a daily basis, and will continue to do. Thank you for using me in spite of me and always making a way, even when I get in your way. I say this prayer in your holy son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Wow. Here we go.
There we go. Well, so about a month ago, I've been working on kind of like what Suze was talking about in our group meeting a couple weeks ago, the whole thing about joy. And about a month ago, I just was sitting around feeling sorry for myself because I spend a lot of time alone, Well, I'm not alone, but Michael's nonverbal, so he can't talk to me. And I just was sitting around moping. And then I found myself moping for a couple of days. And then literally in the middle of the night, I woke up and sat straight up in bed. And it just came to me very clearly that I was not expressing enough gratitude. And that's why my joy wasn't, just coming out of me like it normally does. Because normally I'm a pretty joyful person.
Yeah, I'd say so, usually.
And so I just got my journal out and I started just writing down things that I was grateful for. And on my list were my recovery groups. And of course, GBR was, God-based recovery was on there. And then this voice in my head said, you haven't given your testimony yet, you're not really spreading the word. You're keeping it to yourself. And I was like, okay, that's my nudge. It's time. So that's basically what happened. All right. So I will start. I was born in 1969 in Boston, Massachusetts. My birth mother, I don't really know anything about her except that she was about in her 20s, and she was of the religion Christian Science. And for anyone who doesn't know anything about Christian Science, it is not the same thing as Scientology, that Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, all that. It's a different religion. This religion was founded back in 1879 by a woman in Boston named Mary Baker Eddy. And they do believe that Jesus was the Son of God. They do not believe in the Trinity. Most Christian Scientists do go to the dentist and, the eye doctor and things like that, but they do not take medications or vitamins or get their children vaccinations or seek any kind of medical care unless it's like an emergency, like, a lot of bleeding, a heart attack issue, broken bones. They believe firmly in turning to God in prayer for physical and mental healing. And so my birth mother put it on the request at the little orphanage where I was, it was what she wanted was for me to be adopted by Christian Scientists. And there were a lot of them back in 1969 in the Boston area. And so my parents, Rachel and Dwight, decided they wanted to adopt. They already had my older brother. He was born, he's their biological child, but they decided they wanted to adopt, so they adopted me when I was about 4 months old. And that was the first blessing in my life because they were just very devoted parents and very just very God-based. And so it was just wonderful to be, and I was chosen. So that was just always a special feeling for me. I never really had those conflicted feelings growing up that a lot of adopted kids seem to go through, of feeling like I was rejected. I felt chosen because my parents always made me feel that way. When I was 18 months old, my dad was done serving in the military. So he decided he wanted to move to the state of Indiana, where his family is from. And so that's what we did. And we moved to a 11.5-acre farm in a very tiny town in Indiana. And
can I jump in right quick?
Sure.
You're doing great, and that's where I wanted to start and everything. This might be a question you can't answer, but I mean, did you ever ask later on or wonder, like, what was the situation why your mom had chosen to give you up for adoption? Like, why?
The only thing I know was that there was a woman, and I don't remember her name now. It's in my records, but there was a woman that was running a home for single young girls who were pregnant and their parents were not being supportive of them having the baby. And she was running this home and financing it herself. And that's where my birth mom went. And I do know that, like I said, I don't really know she was a Christian Zionist, but I feel she was, because she asked for me to be adopted by Christian Zionists. So, I think that was important to her. But I just never wanted to really to know anymore. I just felt very content with my parents.
Okay. So how was it on this farm in Indiana?
Oh my gosh, it was wonderful. It was blissful. We had all the animals, the cows, the pigs, the chickens, the goats, all the rabbits, all that. We had a big garden. My mom ran a preschool, and my dad worked about 45 miles away in Indianapolis. He was the director of the Children's Museum. That's what he had always wanted to do. So that's what he got hired to do. And so, he would work all week long, and my mom ran her preschool and took care of the garden and the farm, and then he'd come home and, farm all weekend long. And then I have a sister that's 2 years younger than me, and she was also adopted from the very same orphanage, and her mother also asked for a Christian Zionist family to adopt her. So we had that in common, even though, we're not related. Wow. And then a few years later, they had my little brother. So there were 4 of us. Wow. So all the normal things. We did a lot of road trips. My parents were real big on taking us across the different states. I've been to a lot of states, so that was really fun. And, we went camping a lot, and we did Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, all that kind of stuff. Around the age of 5, someone gifted our family a piano, and I took a liking to it and began just messing around on it, and it came to me very naturally. And I don't really talk about this part of my life very much, because it kind of makes me a little bit sad, because it has kind of a sad ending to it. But I basically was a little piano prodigy. Wow. I took it very well, and by the age of 8, even though I was a pretty shy little girl, my parents were very encouraging and supportive, and my teacher. And at the age of 8, I began actually giving recitals and performances that all across the state of Indiana. So that was pretty exciting. And I did that all the way until I was 10.
You got to express yourself through that, and and
I could play by ear, so that was pretty neat. I could read music too, but I could also just hear it and play it.
Oh, that's a gift.
Yeah, it was wonderful. So just did the normal things, and then when I was in the 5th grade, and it was a very small town, so it was a very small school. When I was in the 5th grade, my parents started feeling like, we need to get to thinking about the future for our kids. They're going to need better education. Especially my older brother. He pretty much has like a genius IQ, and he was just not getting what he needed at school. And so they started praying about, moving to another state where, we could be in a bigger town and get a better education. And unfortunately, the summer I turned 10, my life completely changed. I don't know what triggered it, but my older brother, who, like I said, is not biologically related to me, the summer I turned 10, which was in June, he began sneaking into my bedroom and he began molesting me. And literally I was very confused and very afraid and very full of shame, wondering what I had done to make him think that that was an okay thing to do. Because even though my parents had never really talked to any of us about things like that, I knew in my gut that it wasn't right. And I basically, within just a couple of weeks, went from enjoying playing the piano in front of people and sharing my music to I stopped. I couldn't do it anymore. I would play quietly, in my little piano room by myself, but I would not perform anymore. And I did not want to go to lessons anymore. I stopped having my friends over. I stopped going to my friends' houses. I pulled out of Girl Scouts. I became a total introvert and spent any free time I had basically in my room.
It shattered. I mean, it did a lot, and I'm not here to say anything, but it shattered your trust. It blew up your world. Safe.
Yeah, it was my big brother. You're supposed to be protecting me.
So if that's the case, then I mean, performing, playing the piano in front of crowds, going to lessons, new people coming in, your mind had to be like, well, if my brother was going to do that, somebody that I know, it had to make you, shy away from for,
other people,
from everybody.
Right. Exactly. And I didn't want to have any of my girlfriends over and then maybe him come into the room and do that to them as well,
Understandable.
Because that was a possibility. And it made me want, and I still to this day do not know if he did that to my sister. I don't know. I've never asked her. I just didn't have the heart to ask her. But I do wonder about it. And so at any rate, that went on for 2 years till I was 12. And pretty much every night of my life, I don't really remember him ever not coming in my room. Like I said, I just turned into a shell of a little girl. I went from being a very happy, joyful girl to a shell of a little girl. And I certainly did not know how to tell my parents because I did not think they would believe me. So lesson to be learned, if it's happening to you, you need to talk to somebody about it. But then, my parents were done praying and the answer came to them that we needed to move to, he had 3 options. He had a job offer my dad did in Africa, a job offer in Australia, and a job offer in Missouri. And he picked Missouri. One of the reasons was because there was a Christian Science private school in St. Louis, and we had all gotten accepted there. So we moved to St. Louis. So we went from farm life to a suburban little house, which was very strange for all of us because we couldn't bring all our animals. We boarded some of them at a nearby farm for a few years, and then we just kind of sold them, and that went away. But from the very first night we moved, my brother never came in my room again. And I believe it was because we at the farmhouse were all on different levels from my parents. They were on the bottom floor and we were all upstairs. And I think once we were in this new house where we were all on the same level, he knew he was going to get caught. So he didn't bother trying anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think it was any miraculous, I've been doing the wrong thing kind of a thing. I really do think it was simply because he knew he was going to get caught. So it stopped. And it was a great relief to me. And after a few months, I started to feel more relaxed and some of my joy came back. And we moved in the summer. So I had all summer to get ready for, 7th grade and junior high at a new school. And I started playing the piano again. I got back in lessons. So that was a good thing. And made friends, and I kind of started having a pretty normal life again, which was really, really good. I even, I think I had my first boyfriend in the 8th grade, and that wasn't, I managed to do that pretty okay, I think. Went on to, and my brother's 2 years older than me, so he was in high school when I was in junior high. Went on to be in the 9th grade. So when I was in 9th grade, my brother was in the 11th grade. And I was very nervous about that because that meant we were going to run into each other in the halls. And, he was a big teaser. He was always teasing, and he teased me a lot. And it was kind of awkward that freshman year. And then his senior year, he was very involved in other things and busy, and he left me alone. And the rest of my high school year was pretty darn good. And then my senior year, I had been on the tennis team for a couple of years, and my senior year, we had a tennis match, and the courts were still wet. And I went for a ball and slid across the tennis court, shattered my kneecap, hit my head on the pole, and was knocked unconscious. So when that happened, they could not reach my parents because there weren't cell phones back then, because I'm that old. So the coach was like, we got to call an ambulance because she's not waking up. So they sent me that was my first experience. I rode in the ambulance when I think I was still 17, not quite 18 yet. And it was my senior year. And things got interesting because a little secret that I had been hiding for many years in my life came about at that point, because I had to have surgery. And when the doctor put me under and everything, they look at everything, and he looked down the back of my throat, and there was all kinds of scarring, and then I had some tooth decay that was going on in the back, and it was because I had been hiding an eating disorder. I was anorexic for many years. I'd always been very tiny, but I was extremely underweight all through high school. And I had been eating, and then I'd go make myself throw up in the bathroom. And I weighed like 87 pounds or something when I was in high school. And then I got to about 92, I think, my senior year. So I was very underweight. And so I woke up to my parents being told by the doctor that they were going to talk to social services, and, because obviously this was an extreme case. I was unhealthy, and they needed to, and, they knew my parents were Christian Scientists because it was obvious I hadn't had my shots or no immunizations or anything like that, because I didn't have a medical file anywhere because I'd never been to the doctor. So my parents decided to put me in a behavioral health kind of clinic that was geared for people with eating disorders. So here first time, ambulance ride, hospital, surgery, and now I got medicated, and they gave me some an antidepressant and an anti-anxiety medicine. It was so long ago, I sure don't remember what kind. And so my parents had to start, regularly filling that prescription.
Did anybody try to counsel you and talk to you and ask you questions, or did they just throw you on antidepressants?
They just put me right into the little behavior health clinic. I had to go for 15 days, I think, so I missed school, but I got a note to be excused from school. I had to go for 15 days and stay in a place I'd never been before, and there was counseling there. Okay. Yes, and it came out that I had a lot of self-confidence issues, and they just basically felt like the reason I was doing it was because I felt out of control about other things in my life, which probably stemmed from the abuse. It was PTSD big time, and so this was a way I could establish a sense of control over something, because I felt out of control with my emotions.
That started happening around the same time as the abuse from the brother happened, or?
Yeah, I pretty much started just, making myself throw up a little bit after that. And so
Okay.
I'd hid it since when I was 10, and it was, here it was almost 8 years, 7.5 years that my parents never picked up on it,
Sure.
and not
Okay.
because they weren't paying attention to me, but because when they did ever notice that anything was off about me, they would pray about it rather than come and talk to me about it. And that was just my parents' way. And
Yeah.
God bless them,
I mean, God never said don't talk to your kids about stuff.
Right.
You
That's
got to
right.
talk about what you pray about sometimes too. I
You're
feel.
exactly right. You're exactly right. And I do a lot of times. My parents have since passed away, but it's not something I can go to them and talk to them about now. But there's times where it is an unresolved feeling for me, a feeling like, why didn't you, why didn't you step in and talk to us kids about sex, talk to us about our mental health, and talk to us about
Yeah.
the things you prayed
I
about.
mean, one of the biggest lessons and commands from the Bible is protect the children.
Mhm.
Abigail. I mean, to be that much for God and into it and everything else, but to miss one of those vital commands,
Exactly.
I mean, to each their own. I'm
Yeah.
not judging,
It
but
is a sense of mental anguish for me a lot, and I pray about it a lot because it unsettles me very much because
but you
the
love
one thing
them.
it did do was make me a very vigilant mother myself and very attentive to those kinds of things because it wasn't addressed for me.
I get that. They just kind of. I mean, you love them though. I mean, you don't.
Oh yeah.
But at the same, and they were who they were. I mean, forgive them not for not what they do, but I mean, yeah, you do pick up some of those things too. And like, if you're not paying, do you think they just didn't pay that much attention, or if they felt a certain way, they talk it out, then they just go pray and not go to you about it?
I think they
It seems
really
like they missed
just
some things.
I think they just missed it. They were very busy people. They both had careers, and then there were four of us.
Okay.
And my sister had decided she didn't want to be a Christian Scientist anymore at a pretty young age, and she didn't want to go to the private school. So she only went for 2 years, and then she left and went to public school. So they were dealing with that whole issue. My little brother started experimenting with marijuana and cigarettes and drinking at a very young age, and they were dealing with that.
Well,
And
let me take you back to. I mean, so you, um, 15 days at the clinic,
behavioral health clinic, yeah.
behavioral health clinic. You get out of there. How's the knee? Also you
Oh,
got
yeah.
both of those things you're dealing with.
I had physical therapy for a few months, and I got a scar on my knee from it. I didn't play tennis anymore, and I didn't do track or anything like that anymore. And my friends were all very accepting. Some of them had surgeries of their own, had their tonsils out or everything. I mean, it's a very personal choice for Christian Science what they're going to do, medically speaking. So, I had to get some extra tutoring because I'd missed so much school. But I did stop the behavior. I did not continue with the anorexia anymore. It did work, and the antidepressants and the anti-anxiety medicine. My parents had to get like approval from the school for me to still take the medicine and attend the school because it was a Christian Science school. So that kind of put me in the spotlight a little bit. That was a little embarrassing.
Well, yeah. But I mean, did you talk to? I got two questions I want to ask you.
Sure.
One is, you're closer? I mean, you had friends, but then you might have had like that closer circle of friends, maybe one or two or whatever.
I had a best friend. Yeah.
Did you? I mean, you were dealing with this and it was getting taken care of, the eating disorder and stuff like that. But I mean, did you tell anybody about it?
Yes, my best friend from 7th grade on. She's still my friend to this day. I don't see her very much, but her parents kind of just adopted me in a way. I spent many weekends, even school nights at her house. And once she could drive, once we were in high school and she could pick me up, and we just hit it off instantly. And she lived in Eureka, Missouri, so she was about 30 minutes away from the school. But she was adopted as well, and but her mom and her dad they just got me. And I had a lot of PTSD nightmares, and they would hear me cry out in the middle of the night, and her mom would come in and she'd sing to me, and, you know, do you want to call your mom or your dad? Are you okay? You know, I got a nurturing from them that I even though my parents were very loving and, you know, hugged me and loved me, I got a different kind of nurturing from Janeline's mom, from Froma. She was German. Froma. And Ray. And they spoiled me a lot. They bought me a lot of things. And Janeline and she's the only person that knew what had happened with my brother at that point. The only person I'd ever told. And she was livid, angry. She wanted to beat him up, you know, and she was like insistent, you know, I'm never spending the night at your house. And she would come over to our house for like family dinner, you know, on occasion. And sometimes she'd come over after school, but she's like, I can't spend the night because if I'm in the same house with him for that long, I'm going to go off on him and I'm going to go get the crap out of him, you know.
Did you believe
so
her?
I had a strong sister there, and she was there for me. And she still is to this day. She doesn't practice Christian Science anymore either. Most of the people I went to school with, none of that I'm still friends with, they've all left their religion as well.
It's a tough one for me to hear that they're Christian anything but don't believe in the Holy Trinity. I'm like, how are you praying? I mean, the biggest prayers are pray in the Spirit. So if you don't believe in the Holy Trinity, then I don't know.
You have to Google Christian Science sometime and just look it up. And I still have my book that Mary Baker Eddy wrote. It's called The Science and Health, with Key to the Scriptures. And the Christian Science church services on Wednesdays and Sundays, they read from both the Bible and the Science and Health. That's the Bible. And
teach their own.
So, you know, it's an interesting book. And I've never thrown mine away because my parents bought it for me.
Sure.
So I still have it. But anyway, so yes, I did have someone to confide in, and her parents just really took me in, and that's how I started playing tennis, you know, was because Janeline played tennis. So she got me into that because I was never very athletic, and I was not very good at tennis, mind you, but at least I tried.
Here's the thing that, I mean, I just pick up on it. It could be me. I'm not ever saying this is definitive. This is just how I feel. But I mean, you get adopted out by two really good parents that they took you all over. They had the farm. So that was a good upbringing, you know. I think God had his hands on that. Secondly, sometimes I believe, I've said this before, that God will kind of allow some bad situations to happen to prevent worse ones. And you move when you moved to St. Louis, the abuse from your brother stopped.
Correct.
You didn't really like the move. That was kind of difficult, whatever, but it ended that in a sense.
Right.
Okay, so, and then now you're playing, you meet her, you're playing tennis, you're like, oh, you know, whatever, but then have kind of a freak accident. You don't hear a lot of accidents like that with tennis.
No.
Which sends you to the hospitals for them to find out you have the eating disorder.
Yep.
And so they work that out. You don't play tennis anymore. I mean, okay, but you got, who knows how much longer the eating disorder would have went on.
It probably would still be going on because it was the only way I had to feel in control, and I felt very out of control of my feelings. So,
but God saw that as not being in control, like that.
Right.
You were taking control of something, but in a very detrimental way. And it just seems to me those are three instances where I could see his hand on your life. Guiding you and protecting you in some way, and also letting some things play out, you know, for whatever his purpose is. But that's just kind of how I choose to see that sometimes.
I agree with you. Very much so.
So what, senior year, you're back at school, you're probably on crutches, healing up.
I was on crutches.
No.
I was on crutches. It was a good senior year, though, after that, you know, and my brother was off at college, so things were a lot less stressful at home for me because I didn't ever have, because in the back of my mind, Trev, I always wondered if he would start again.
Yeah,
and what would do.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. So he was gone. He was off to college, and I didn't have to worry about it anymore.
Have you forget? I mean, how's you're gonna hate me for asking this. How's
No.
how's the forgiveness towards him?
Oh, we'll come back to that in just a minute because
I got you. I should have
there's
saved
been
it.
some. No, that's okay. There's been a lot that God has done in that department.
Okay.
So I graduated, and my friends all went off to college, and I was too terrified to do that. I did not want to leave home and go away to college. I just didn't want to do it. So I got a job at a shoe store. And when I did that, started meeting lots of people that were not Christian Zionists, obviously, because I was out in the big real world. And so I was 18 and I got invited to my first, like big deal party thing where people that were, under 21, were drinking and smoking cigarettes and doing drugs and all kinds of stuff. And my friend from work, she was like, here, try this. And it was a screwdriver, made with the orange juice and vodka. And I was like, oh, I just thought it was orange juice. So I was like, okay. And I, down some of it. And I was like, whatever. But after, but it tasted good. So I just went ahead and finished it. And I just felt this, warmth come over me. And, because I had a little buzz going on. And all of a sudden I did not feel quite so shy anymore. And like I, said in my little thing to you, it was like boom, instant courage, liquid courage. And I started going to parties more often. I started smoking cigarettes. I had never dabbled in drugs or anything, but I definitely took a great liking to the alcohol, all kinds. And I started regularly going on the weekends, to parties. And then, I had a boyfriend that was older and he could buy alcohol. So he would buy it for me and I'd get the little bottles and put it in my purse and, go home. My room was way down in the basement. So, I had a basement door to come in. I didn't have to come in the front door when I'd come home at 1 or 2 in the morning, My parents had no idea for quite a while. And then devil creeped in again and depression started getting really bad for me. And the medication that they had put me on back at the behavior clinic, just, it wasn't a high enough dose or it wasn't the right medicine. I don't know. But I started feeling a lot of thoughts of, I just don't want to be here anymore. And
Wow.
I ended up taking one night, all of my anxiety and depression medication, the whole bottle of both of them, and swallowed them all. And my younger brother came in to try to wake me up to have me give him a ride before I needed to go to work to his friend's house, and he couldn't wake me up. And my parents weren't home, so he called the ambulance and off they took me. And they pumped my stomach and put me on oxygen and intubated me and all kinds of things. But I came around. God saved me, basically. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's the only answer to it. Was God knew he just wasn't done with me yet. Mm. And so my parents, of course, found out about it, and there was alcohol in my system. So they found out about that too. And I smelled like cigarettes. So they found out about all that. So they were like, okay, you can keep living at our home, but you can't, you gotta, when you turn a certain age in Christian Science, you can you join the church and you sign papers and, you're a member of the church. And so they were like, you have to go and, we have to get you off the membership of the church and everything. And obviously you're not going to church with us anymore. I was like, that's fine. I don't want to anyway. And I did have the courage to say to them, this medicine isn't right. I need you to help me, get a psychiatrist, and I need the right medicine. So I was old enough at that point to go in the welfare system at that point and get on Medicaid. So I did that, and I got a psychiatrist, and I got different meds, and but I kept on with the drinking and whatnot, and my parents just couldn't handle it anymore. And when I turned 20, they kind of dealt with it for a couple of years, and then they were just like, they'd give me ultimatums like, stop coming in at 2 a.m, stop coming in at 4 a.m. You got to stop drinking, you got to quit smoking, or we're going to kick you out, And when I was 20, they finally just said, we're done. You're out. And so they kicked me out. They had my bags packed when I came home from a party one night. And my friend came and picked me up, and a different friend, not my best friend, a different friend. And she said, my parents said you can come, and she had a little apartment area at her parents' house. And she said, as long as you give, just throw them some money for some groceries and just like buy my cigarettes, that they're not going to ask for rent or anything like that. Just, and my parents were kind enough to let me have the car, and they continued to pay my car insurance. So that was nice. They didn't have to do that, but it was supportive, even though they didn't support anything I was doing. And I decided to leave the shoe store, and my dad actually knew of someone who needed a live out nanny for her two little boys. And I did a lot of babysitting when I was growing up. So it just really, I was like, yeah, definitely. It was good money, and it was going to be with kids all day long. Who wouldn't like that? So I took that job on, and I did that for a while and lived with my friend Lynn and her parents, and continued relying heavily on alcohol I would go to work sober, but I would come home and drink 12-pack every night, or go through a couple of bottles of wine with my friend. It was nothing. And then, let's see. And so I still struggled with depression and anxiety. Drinking doesn't help either one of those things.
Was you? It doesn't. It makes it worse. But
exactly.
Was you able to find? How long was it before you found a psychiatrist, or did you?
Oh, yes, I did find a psychiatrist, and I got it. Back then they still had social workers. So they don't have them so much anymore, but back then they still had social workers. So I had a social worker, a very kind woman named Mary, and she helped me get a psychiatrist, and I had therapy. So I went to my psychiatrist every couple of months, and I went to therapy twice a month, and just got to talk about my feelings. But I never talked about, being molested or anything like that. But I talked about the eating disorder issue. I talked about the depression. I talked about the anxiety, and I talked about the fact that there were many times I just felt like I didn't want to be alive anymore. So what was the point? So we talked about that a lot. And when I was 21, I was at Wendy's restaurant, and where my little brother was working, and the assistant manager caught my eye, and his name was Mickey, and we started dating. And their boss had an autistic 6-year-old, and she needed someone to be his caregiver, because he only went to school part-time, because he could only manage so many hours at school before he was just wiped out, and he couldn't contain himself behaviorally anymore. So he only had like a half day of school. So she needed someone who could be with him for the rest of the day, because she was at work. And get him ready for work or school in the morning, get him off the bus, get him onto the bus. And then, so I moved in with them, and Mickey lived at Sheila's home, the boss of the mother of this little autistic boy. And so, we basically went from dating to living in the same house within a few months. And very quickly, it was a neat experience, because I'd never been around a special needs child before. And so I got a lot of experience. I got hit a lot and bit and other things. But this little boy had the same name as my little brother, which was Josh. So I had a special place in my heart for little Josh. And very quickly, within about 6 months of living there, Mickey asked me to marry him. And I was like, yes, I will. This was the right thing for me. It seemed like, he was my best friend, and everything seemed to be going very well. But there was a lot of drinking, and he dabbled with drugs, which I never did, but he did. And I got pregnant very quickly. And when that happened, I could not stand the smell of cigarettes anymore. And it made me sick. And I started losing weight. And so Mickey's mother said, I'm worried she's going to lose the baby because I mean, there was nowhere to go to get away from that smell because everyone smoked at the house. And went to the doctor, and she took me to her OB doctor. His mom did, and she's like, yeah, she can lose this baby very, very easily if we don't get her someplace where there's no cigarette smoking. She can keep food down. She's losing too much weight. So I did the only thing I could think of because I sure didn't have enough money to go live somewhere by myself. I called my parents, and my mom and my dad said, "Oh, of course you can come home, but you can't drink and you can't smoke." And I'm like, "Well, I can't anyway because I'm pregnant." So I went back to my parents' house, and I was on Medicaid, so I was doing my little OB appointments like I was supposed to and everything. And Sheila calls me up and she says, Mickey's cheating on you. I got proof of it. And she had proof of it. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, I'm done. I don't want to marry him. I'm done with that. I'm going to raise this kid by myself. Well, I had my parents. So I eventually was like, the only thing I know is to turn to God, because I don't know how to do this single parent thing by my, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to be a mom. And, I was pretty scared, the thought of how much money it costs to raise a kid and all that. So I started going to church again with my parents. And I started going every Sunday and every Wednesday. I was reading the Bible and doing all of the things and praying a lot. And, I had a good, a long birth, but he took 14 hours to come, but he came. I had my son, Joseph, and I continued to live with my parents, and things were going really well. I was still taking my medications and seeing my therapist and going to the psychiatrist. But because I was going to the Christian Science Church, I had not yet I'd taken Joseph for his physical and that kind of thing, but I had struggled with the whole concept of immunizations because I never had any of them. And I didn't know if I wanted to do that to him or not, because there's so many different feelings about what those immunizations can do. And I hadn't given him any at that, I hadn't taken him in for any at that point. And he got the German measles. And so we were quarantined. And then a big tragedy happened. My little brother, who was 18, he had just turned 18. He had been in Illinois signing up for college, which was a great thing because, we didn't think he'd ever do anything like that. He was signing up for college, but he decided to party, him and his best friend, with a bunch of people there in Illinois at the university there. But he had an early flight to catch to Texas the next morning. And he partied really hard. And then he had his alarm set, and he got up and he got behind the wheel of the car when he was still hungover and high. And he fell asleep at the wheel and ran into a big old 18-wheeler. And he pretty much, he died on the spot. He passed away. They took him to in the helicopter and brought him to the hospital and everything. And he was in the ICU on life support, but he had coded so many times. And, and the hard part for me was I was quarantined with my son, and I didn't get to go say bye to my little brother. So that put me in a bit of a spiral, but I had my therapist, and because I wanted to be dead because my brother was dead, because he was my little best buddy. And that was a very hard time for me, but I got through it. And the other thing that it did was Mickey had left and gone to California for a while, and he'd actually gotten married to some girl out there, but he got divorced, and he came back when he found out that my little brother had died, because they had worked together. And he came knocking at the door, and he wanted to say, I just have to check on you and make sure you're okay. And he'd never seen Joseph before, and Joseph was 20 months old, I guess, at that point. And I was terrified because I didn't want him to see Joseph, but yet I was like, it's not right to keep him from his kid. I didn't know what to do. And here came Joseph crawling up the stairs, so he saw his son for the first time and he was enamored. And I started letting him come over and he did start paying some child support. And, he had moved back to St. Louis for good. And we started spending, he was spending time with Joseph, so he was spending time with me because I didn't let him take Joseph anywhere by himself. He had to see him at our house or go to the park with me or, that kind of thing. And the more time we spent together, all those feelings came back and, resurfaced. And we ended up getting back together again and deciding, that we wanted to start our lives together. We wanted to get married. So we did. We got married and we lived with my parents for about 3 months until we had enough money saved up for our own first apartment, which was in about an hour away from where my parents lived. So he was a clever man, that Mickey. He quickly got me away from my parents into a place where, I couldn't just run to them if anything went wrong. And that's when basically we lived there about 2 weeks and he started becoming very physically and verbally abusive. A lot of hitting, punching, shoving, got knocked down the stairs at the apartment complex so many times. And it was not good. And at the root of it was I figured out, I caught him. He was doing cocaine. And we were struggling with money all the time. And because I wasn't working, I was taking care of, Joseph at home. He wasn't old enough to go to school yet. So we were just relying on, on Mickey's income. And I'd go to swipe the card or write the check for groceries and there wasn't nothing there. And I'd have to leave the store embarrassed because we didn't have money for it. And then we couldn't pay our rent and we were behind on our rent all the time. And I'd have to go crying to my parents all the time. We need money for this. We need money for this. And they never said no. They always, said they would. And I remember the first time my mom figured out that something was not going right. I had bruises on my arms and things and on my legs and my ankles. And my mom was like, he's hitting you, isn't he? I just was like, no, Mom, he would never do that, but she knew. And of course told my dad. And so they did what they always did. They prayed. They did not confront him about it or anything. I wouldn't admit it, but they knew. And then he got pregnant with my daughter.
How old was your dad at that point?
Oh gosh, I don't even know.
50s, 60s?
In his 50s, yeah, in his 50s. My parents were both, they were the same age. So I believe they were probably about 53.
Right. Like he wasn't too old to have his first instinct be to go over and beat the crap out of Mickey.
Well, he had talks with Mickey. Now, he did go and talk to him many times, and he told him that he was not being a proper husband. And he said, this is what a husband does. Read it to him out of the Bible. This is the way the man is supposed to be, and and things like that. But he didn't. He sure didn't lay him out like I wish he would.
Yeah, I mean, he could have done that and then told him the stories of the Bible. I think God would have been just fine with that too.
Dad was such a peaceful man. There were, I've never seen. My mom used to make him spank. None of us girls ever got spanking, but the boys got spanking. We got soap in our mouths, but the boys got spankings, and sometimes even with the belt. And my mom would make my dad do it. And I mean, if they were real bad, and afterwards he would be, I see him outside, he'd be crying. It was just not in his nature to be that way. So
I get that, actually.
Yeah. So I got pregnant with my daughter, and this time the smell of cigarettes didn't bother me. I did quit drinking, but I still smoked, which was not good, but I did. And I was about 4 months along, I guess. And Mickey was not home, and it was 3 a.m, and I had forgotten I had laundry downstairs in the laundry room at the apartment complex. And so, Joseph was sound asleep, and I locked him in, and, I got the laundry basket. I'm like, I got to go get the laundry because, sometimes people steal your laundry. And I didn't want that. So I went down and got the laundry, and I was coming back up the steps, and I don't know what I did wrong, but Mickey came home, saw me on the steps, and he grabbed a hold of the back of my shirt and yanked me down the steps, 4 months pregnant, and the laundry fell all over me, and I started bleeding. And we made such a ruckus that one of our neighbors came out, and she called 911, and an ambulance came for me, and I almost lost my daughter. And I was like, okay, time to go again, time to go back home to mom and dad, because you're not safe here and you're going to lose your kid. Abby, straighten up, be strong. So I called my parents as soon as the hospital released me, and my parents drove the hour out, and Mickey was screaming at both of them the whole time, but you can't take my family away from me. Don't even think about taking Joseph. Fine, take her. She's a wretch. I don't care. Take her. I don't need her, but you're not taking my son, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, my dad was very firm with him, and my mom too. And they were like, we'll call the police. We have proof that that this is what happened. The neighbor knows what you did, Mickey. So she's a witness to what happened, and they'll press charges. We'll press charges.
Yeah, you should have been in jail for attempted murder and of an unborn child. I mean, right. The dude was, Satan was working overtime in that guy's life.
Oh, he was very high.
Alcohol, cocaine, I get that, but that's Satan's doorways to get in there.
Yep.
Just to say Mickey had a problem, that's a cop. Yeah, he did, but that's kind of a cop out. Somebody doing that under any chemical substances has some issues going on with them.
Right.
And he should have absolutely.
He was a definite narcissist. His dad's a narcissist. He was a.
I wish better for him today, but she should have absolutely been hauled off to jail for that one. Sorry.
Yeah.
Not sorry.
No, that's okay. I didn't have it in me at that point. I was feeling pretty icky and weak, and I was just wanted to get away. So I went back to my parents' house, and I, recovered, and I had my daughter, and I got divorced from Mickey, and got full custody of Joseph, and had full custody of Liana, my oldest daughter. And I got back into my Bible again. I didn't go back to church, but I did get back into my Bible again. And I was doing a better job of turning to God when I felt scared and frightened. Because when I was still pretty young, and I had 2 kids, and no job. So I got on food stamps and got them on Medicaid and all that. And then Mickey was not giving me any child support. So they had temporary assistance for needy family, which is like state child support. So I did get that for the kids. And, I kept my parents' house clean, and I contributed with groceries, and I made the meals. And I took in a couple little kids to babysit and made a little extra money that way. And, I provided what my kids needed. I didn't pay for our home. My parents were doing that, but they were like, we want you to save your money so you can get your own place. So any money you make, and don't need to spend directly on getting things that the kids need or you need, put it in a savings account and don't touch it. And then you'll have enough eventually to live on your own. They were very supportive of me staying home with the kids. They didn't want me to put them in daycare and go get a job. And I'll be grateful for that always, because those were some it's very important to be with your kids when they're little, if you can be, So for 4 years, I lived for the next, until my daughter was 4, I lived with them, and things were pretty peaceful. I went to family Thanksgiving in Indiana, and, we had Christmas and all those things. And it was a good life for my 2 oldest. They They got to go on a lot of trips with my parents. My parents took them traveling across the United States. My parents took them to Costa Rica. So they got to do that because my parents have a cabin in Costa Rica.
So that's really cool.
Yeah.
4 years you were doing okay, no drinking though.
No, I was not drinking, and I was not even smoking cigarettes then. I had quit all that, and I had enough money saved up, so I got my first parent. My parents paid like my deposit, I think, but I paid the first. I paid my rent every month. They paid my initial deposit because it was pretty big. It was like double what the rent was, and I didn't have that. And I got a job at Walmart, and kind of moved up pretty quickly. I started out. So the kids were in daycare during. Well, my son was in school, and then Liana was in daycare, and then my parents, and then my sister and her husband would watch them on the weekends if I had to work on the weekends. And I started out being a cashier, and I got invited. I was so good at it that I got invited to go back and run the counter at like the Tire Lube Express where they do the oil changes and the tires and everything. So I learned all about tires and oil changes and, wearing all the tickets and learning about the computer work and all that kind of stuff. And I had that job for a while. And then my daughter was getting ready to turn 5, and Joseph would have been turning 7. And in the state of Missouri, and what I wanted was, I was always trying to get child support from Mickey because I knew he was still in Missouri, and it just wasn't right that he wasn't paying in child support. It's against the law. But the lawyer my parents had said, let's go this route. Let's get him to relinquish parental rights because he's not ever going to come around and pay child support. And then you could just keep getting the state child support until they're 18. I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. So in order to relinquish parental rights, you have to, of course, notify them that that's what you want to do. And I only had one phone number for Mickey, and that was for his younger brother, Sean. And so I called Sean and I said, this is what I want to do. By law, I have to let him know. And so I'm letting you know, so you know where he is. You can let him know that he's going to, if you could give me an address so we can mail him the paperwork, that would be cool. And so Sean gave me his address, but then he called Mickey. And Mickey right away, I don't know how, I guess because one of my brother's friends was also still friends with me and was friends with Mickey as well. And he knew where I had moved to. He found out where I lived, and he came knocking on my door at my apartment. And he'd never seen Liana. She's 5, going to be 5. It was almost her birthday. He knocked on the door, and I was like, well, I'm not letting you in. The whole point of this is that I want complete, total, done. Let's just be done with it. You haven't spent any time. You don't even know your daughter. You've never seen her, and you haven't done anything to help me with Joseph the whole time before there was, Liana was even born, so we're done. And he said, well, I'm not going to relinquish my rights. I want to start seeing my kids. And they were back in their bedroom, and I strictly told them they couldn't come out. And I went out on our porch to talk to him. So it had been so long, Joseph didn't even recognize that was his dad. He was pretty little when his dad and I, split up. So anyway, I ended up caving and let him come to Liana's little birthday party at McDonald's. And she was infatuated with her daddy. She was crazy about him, and he brought her a little Furby toy and, some other things. And they just hit it off instantly. And he picked right up with Joseph where he had left off. And he started spending time with them again. And he was working again and, holding a job. And he had his own place and had a car. And he was doing the responsible thing. And after he came around for a few months, I let him move back in, and we started the relationship all over again. I just kept going back every time. And of course it didn't take long, and the abuse started again. And he never did it in front of the kids. He always waited till they were asleep or at someone else's house, and then it all started again. And then money was disappearing again. Money I had been saving because I wanted to get a better car. And I eventually knew I wanted to, get my kids a house. My parents said if I kept saving, they'd help me get a house. And then they were out of the country when Mickey came back they traveled a lot because they'd both retired at that point, and they were out of the country when I let Mickey move back in. And of course, when they found out, they were very disappointed in me, and they let me know so. But they were like, if this is what you want to do, we will help you. Maybe if you guys have a home and a yard and you get some animal, a dog and a cat, and you're doing like the normal thing, maybe this will keep him calm. And, you guys can really make a go of it this time. They were just gung ho. Let's support Abby and Mickey. So that's what happened. My parents took out like a second mortgage on their house and bought us a house with a nice yard. And we got a dog and we got a cat. And my mental health started just going way downhill. And I took a bunch of pills again, and I ended up back in the hospital getting my stomach pumped. So that was the third time that I tried to end my life. And
nothing really specifically triggered that. I mean, you get the house, you get the back.
Too many times getting beat down, you just start to feel like, what is the point? I'm not loved. I just felt worthless. And he had also made me quit my job at Walmart, so I didn't have my sense of like career going there anymore. And after that third attempt, my psychiatrist, who had been with me all these years, she was like, you know what? You need to just apply for disability because you can't function. You can't work. You can't take care of your own health, let alone and be strong enough to go out into the workforce and make money and leave your kids. So let's apply for disability. So I did apply for disability, and it was much easier to get back in those days. So it didn't take long, and I got disability, and I got a pretty good chunk of money coming in. And we were supposed to be giving my parents money every month towards the house payment, like, rent to own kind of a thing. And we did okay for about 5 months, of paying them regularly and still paying our utilities. And I was still on, we weren't remarried or anything. So I was still on food stamps, and, so we were making it. We got a dog, we got a cat, things seemed to calm down a bit. And then I got pregnant again. And this time it was twins. And that scared Mickey to pieces. The concept of 2 more mouths to feed terrified him. And he went hardcore back to the cocaine and prostitutes. And there went all of the money. And I had no money to give my parents for months. And they put up with it for about 4 months. And then my dad had a stroke. And my mom had to start getting him physical therapy because he couldn't speak and he could hardly move. And she had to hire a caregiver because she was still trying to work a job because, they were paying for 2 houses now. So my mom said, you guys start paying this next month. If you don't pay, I'm serving you with an eviction papers and you're out of there. I can't help you anymore. And I don't blame her for that because, he was snorting all our money away. And that's what ended up happening. We got eviction papers, and Mickey ran to his dad, who was extremely wealthy, and said, oh, Abby's parents are kicking us out. We have nowhere to go. Abby's pregnant with twins, and we have nowhere to go. So his dad bought a home in Kirkwood, Missouri, and I hated it, but that's where we had to go. So I had the twin, Kaylee and Michael, and then boom, got pregnant like right again after that, and then had and things kept going on. There was times where he didn't hit me for, 4 or 5 months, and then we'd have a month straight where I got hit every single night. And his mom knew that's what he was doing. His mom was a heavy drinker. And so, I had a drinking buddy. So we do what we had to do with the kids and get them all settled and good. And then, we'd have our wine together because she stayed at our house a lot because she loved being a grandma, and we had room for her. So, she stayed with us a lot. And, she knew what her son was doing because he had no problem knocking me around in front of her because his dad knocked his mom around in front of him. So, he grew up seeing that kind of abuse. And then also having, a mom that was an alcoholic and a dad who was a narcissist. So that's what he grew up with. And so that's just how he lived. That's what he did. He just didn't seem to know any better. And I ended up getting endometriosis very, very badly. And I had to have a hysterectomy. And after the hysterectomy surgery, it takes a lot of time to recover from that. So Mickey's mom was taking care of the kids. And my older two, Joseph and Liana, were, basically they were being little parents themselves, bless their hearts. They from the moment Kaylee, Michael, and Alex were around, they were being little parents themselves, helping with so much because we had 3 little ones under the age of 2 altogether. And, they'd go to school and then they'd come home and take care of their brother and sister. And then I was on bed rest back in the back. We moved the kids out of the bedroom and had them share bedrooms. So I had to be quarantined because I got MRSA, a very bad staph infection. And I was on bed rest and morphine and very strong antibiotics. And I had a nurse come every day to treat my wound. I had a wound vac. It was a big mess. And I couldn't spend time with my children. And I went into a very deep depression. And as soon as I was done with all the medicines and off the IVs, and I was up and moving around a little bit and, starting to recover and things, I had a total and complete mental breakdown, and I completely just was done with life. And I took every pill I had in my house, which was lots, because I had a PTSD medication, an anxiety medication, and 2 different depression medications, and I swallowed them all. And my daughter called 911 when she couldn't wake me up, and it took them quite some time to revive me, but they did. I was in the ICU for, I believe, 2 weeks before I could breathe on my own. And during this time, Mickey decided that I didn't deserve to have my youngest children. He wasn't real worried about the oldest 2. Because, they were old enough to be driving and they were working and going to school and taking care of themselves. And I guess he just figured they were done growing up. He wasn't going to worry about them. But while I was in the hospital, then I went to behavioral health after that, obviously, because it was my 5th time to try to end my life. It was pretty evident that I needed more severe psychiatric care, and that probably I'd had wrong diagnosis of what was wrong with my mental health. And I did, because all along it had just been depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. But for real, I was bipolar, the high lows and the very low lows, and then the manic, the extreme highs. And whenever I would get manic is when I would get suicidal. So finally they put me in behavioral health. I was there for 2 weeks. So my older 2 were on their own in the house. I guess Mickey left them enough money to get bills and food. I don't really remember too well what happened. I just know that I expected him to come pick me up from the hospital. I had no idea he had taken my children, my youngest, but he had taken my 3 youngest and moved into a home that his sister-in-law's mom used to live in before she had passed away, but Mickey's dad now owned it. So he let Mickey live there with the kids. It was just 2 minutes away from my home, but he stole my children and left. And so when my daughter came to pick me up, she had to tell me, and she said, Joseph's moved out. He's living with his girlfriend. And she said, and Mama, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to go do my own thing. You need to get, pardon me, but your shit together. She said, I have given up so much of my life, and so did Joseph, to help with the little ones, and we love our brothers and sisters. She said, but it's time for me to figure out who I am besides being a little mommy. And so I had to let her go, and so I came home to a empty house. My children all gone. And I ended up reaching out to my aunt. She's really my step aunt, but I reached out to my aunt who lived nearby, told her what was going on, and she's a Christian Scientist as well. And told her, basically what all had happened. She came over and she sat with me for several hours, and she said, you need to reach out to your brother. And I said, why? And he said, because I forgot to mention something very important. After my son Alex was born, my dad had a second stroke and he passed away. So I never got to say bye to my dad or make amends with my dad about anything. He didn't really know that we weren't paying the money for the home, or he wasn't aware of any of that. But in my heart, I would have loved to have told him I was very sorry for all of that. And just say goodbye to him and tell him thank you. And I never got to do that. So that's a hard one for me to carry around. And I have to pray. I pray about that a lot still to this day. And then my mom, she said, and so my aunt said, what has happened is your mom has cancer and she was refusing medical treatment. And she's dying. She had lost like 80 pounds and she was, weighing like 80 pounds herself now. And when my dad passed away, she just kind of gave up on life. She had lost her best friend, her soulmate. And then the cancer came, and then just my aunt would come over and spend time with me. And she said, do you want me to take you to your mom? And I couldn't do it. I should have, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't face her. I was so full of shame for everything that had happened. And my mom ended up passing away, and I did not get to say goodbye to my mom. So I didn't say bye to my brother. I didn't get to say goodbye to my mom, and I didn't get to say bye to my dad. So I have my sister in Florida, and my brother was in California. So I did reach out to my sister, and we kind of drifted apart, but everything's fine now between us and everything. And so I reached out to my sister, and she said, you need to contact Jeremy because Mom and Dad left you money, which was the last thing I ever expected. The last thing I ever expected was they were going to leave me anything. But they did. They left us all benefits from their life insurance policy, and it was a substantial amount of money. It was enough that I could write Mickey's dad a check for the house, and it became my house. So it could never be taken from me. So I'd already lost my children. But when I reached out to my brother, he said, how are the kids, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, Mickey took them. And he said, and it was very hard for me to reach out to my brother. I'll just tell you that, because we'd had basically no contact in years, but I didn't know how to reach him. And he said, well, how are the kids? And I said, well, Mickey took them. And then Joseph and Leon are off doing their own thing. And she said, well, I'll get you a lawyer and we'll get your kids back. And I said, you'd do that? And he said, I got money from Mom and Dad too. He said, I didn't spend all the money my parents gave me on the house. I put some of it away. So my brother got me an attorney. He came to St. Louis. I wouldn't let him stay with me. He stayed at a hotel, but he got me an attorney. We went to court, and Mickey pulled up. I had no police evidence of him ever doing anything, ever striking me or hitting me, or nothing had ever been documented.
Man.
And he had all my medical records with all my attempts and all my mental health problems. And so he got full custody of the kids, the youngest three, and I got partial. And I was supposed to get visits. I did not even have supervised visits. I was supposed to just get visits with them. You were supposed to drop them off, and I had so many hours a week. And he kept up with it for about 3 months, and then he just stopped answering the phone, and he wouldn't bring them over anymore. And it's important to say that a lot of the stress that was going on for my older two also was because all three of my youngest are diagnosed with autism. They're all on the spectrum. Kaylee's high functioning, that's Michael's twin sister. She's high functioning. Michael's low functioning, nonverbal, and Alex is high functioning. And so there were my oldest two were helping me with all the therapies they were getting and all of that. And then when Mickey took them, he stopped. Well, he kept the therapies up for Michael because he's severe, but he stopped taking Kaylee and Alex to their therapies, and they went on to do well and things, but he kept them from me. And I went many years without any contact. I knew where they were. I knew where their house was, but I didn't ever, try to, what happened was I developed this condition called agoraphobia. Whereas the extreme fear of leaving your home, and I could not go anywhere. I couldn't leave the house. I had a dog that, I still had our family dog, and I had the hardest time even just opening the door to let the dog out to go to the bathroom. And so for about a year after Mickey took the kids and won custody of them, I lived, or I guess about 10 months, I lived by myself, but my aunt and my brother made sure that I was still getting food stamps and my SSI check and things. My SSI check went way down because I had gotten money from my parents. So I could not pay my bills. And, I had utilities to pay and things. I had food, but I couldn't pay my utilities. So between my aunt and my brother, they paid those bills for me every month. And then my son, Joseph, my oldest, he reached out to me and he said, Mom, how you doing? And, whatever. And I said, fine, I'm hanging in there, but I got, agoraphobia. I can't leave the house. I'm terrified. And there's no medication for that condition.
Oh, yeah, I've never heard there to be, but I want to ask right quick, like, how did that come about? Like when it first started to hit you and take hold, like, what'd you think how long before you realized that's what it was? I mean, had you ever heard of it before? And
I had never heard of it before.
One day and couldn't.
But what happened was I literally got up one morning and I went to go outside to smoke a cigarette and let the dog out. And when I went to open the door, I literally just could not feel my feet anymore. And I felt like I was going to pass out, and I had to catch myself on the countertop in the kitchen. And so I closed the door again. I thought I was just like physically sick, and then I went to try to open the door again, and the same thing came over me. And I got it open enough to let the dog out, but I couldn't go out there, and I could not open the door the whole way and my feet would just, I'm not playing it, Trev, but my feet would not move. I could not move any closer to the porch to get. I think I maybe got 1 foot, like, kind of out on the little edge of my step there. And everything just went black, and I felt like I was going to pass out. And it just kept happening every time I tried. It just kept happening. And then my aunt would come over and she'd be like, let's go to the store. And we'd go to open the door to get ready to go out. And I would just be like, I couldn't go. So she'd just take my money and she'd go get my groceries for me. So I told my son what was going on, and he said, well, Mom, we've Chloe and I, it was his girlfriend. We had a girl. So I had a granddaughter, her name Aria. And he said, but our living situation has gotten to the point where we just don't have enough room here, where they were living with her parents or with her mom, I guess. And there just wasn't enough room. And I think her mom was expecting a lot of money from them for rent, and Chloe wasn't working. It was just Joseph, and they just didn't have enough. And he said, is it possible we could come live with you? And I was like, answered prayer. I won't be alone. I get at least one of my kids come back, So they moved in, and things were great at first. I still couldn't leave. And then my son eventually did get me to the point where I could get in the car with him and go to my psychiatry appointments, which were important because they didn't have telehealth back then. So in order to get my meds renewed, I had to go see my psychiatrist. I did get to the point where I could go to my appointments every few months. And, but Chloe and Joseph took my debit card and took my food stamp card, and they began just using my money for whatever they felt like it. And the utilities were not always getting paid, and we got very behind. So I had to go to my brother again and say, I need money because the bills aren't getting paid. And of course he wanted to know why. And he was like, of course, let's go into your savings that you have and we'll get this much out and you guys can make that last, because it was supposed to be, saved for when I was too old to work and, things like that. I would have some money to live off of. But we just kept having to tap into it because my son didn't want to work. He wanted to stay home and play video games. And Chloe wasn't working. And then we had, my granddaughter. So the money was just dwindling away. And my psychiatrist decided that the only way to stop this agoraphobia was to give me shock treatment. So my aunt took me 3 times a week for 6 weeks, and I had shock treatment. And I will tell you right now that if you know of anyone who's thinking that's the right route, please don't do it. Is the worst experience you can ever have, and it messes with your memory something fierce. I lost a lot of memory, and it did. The agoraphobia went away, and I started being able to go. I don't think that was from the shock treatment, though. I really believe it was because my aunt was praying for me very hard because she loved me so much. I think she healed me, God healed me, but through my aunt. I don't think it was shock treatment that did it at all. So just don't ever do shock treatment. It's a horrible thing to go through. You wet yourself while you're under, and you wake up and you're covered in your own urine, and you feel awful and weak, and you can't do anything. And someone has to sit with you for several hours when you get home because you're disoriented. And I lost years of memories of things that happened in my childhood. Like my long-term memory it's not as good as it is, and I have a lot of trouble with my short-term memory as well. So my son was wandering my money away, and eventually it ran out, and I didn't have any more, and he did have to go to work. And I started having trouble with my teeth. And they didn't want to take me to the dentist because we didn't have money to pay for the dentist. But my teeth started disintegrating. I lost like 3 or 4 of my front teeth, and they fell out. And one day, I was in my son and his girlfriend's room, and I was cleaning. I was dusting. And for some reason I opened, and I haven't heard from my daughter, my oldest daughter, in a year and a half at this point, I think. I knew that she had my grandson, Isaac, but I had never seen him. And I knew she had broken up with his dad, and she was taking care of Isaac by herself. But I just heard that through the grapevine kind of thing. Some of her friends had told me. And so I was very sad. I knew she wasn't angry at me, or mad at me. I knew she was disappointed in me, but I missed her every day. Of course, I missed all my kids. But someone told me to open this drawer and I'm not a nosy person at all, but someone told me to open this drawer in my son's room. And I opened it and there was a letter right there on top with in bright ink. It said mom. And I knew Aria wasn't old enough to write a letter to her mom, and it wasn't Chloe's handwriting like to her mom. And it just occurred to me that that was a letter for me. And I opened it up, and it was a letter from my daughter, Liana. And she had put it on Joseph's windshield wiper, on his windshield.
Mm-hmm.
And he had never given it to me. Because in the letter, she has stated that she missed me so terribly and she wanted to be back in contact with me. So she wanted to, see me and for me to see my grandson. And I don't know how long ago that letter had been written, but I immediately went to my son and said, give me your freaking phone right now, because her phone number was on there. And he was like, no, you're not, she left you, Mom. She left you. I'm here. I came back. I'm taking care of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, let me talk to my daughter. And I called my daughter and she came over that very night. She didn't bring my grandson, but she came over that very night and she brought me a carton of cigarettes and she brought me a bunch of makeup, because she asked me on the phone if there was anything that I needed or I wanted. And I said, well, to be honest, I wouldn't mind a haircut, and I wouldn't mind having a little bit of some makeup if you can spare it, and some cigarettes. And she said, sure. And when she got to the house, she saw that pretty much the only clothes I had were pajamas and a couple outfits to wear that I'd probably had for about 6 years, and they're looking pretty worn out. And she was disgusted with her brother that he was not making sure that I was okay. And she said, why don't you ever buy yourself anything? I said, I don't have my debit card. Joseph and Chloe have it. Oh boy. That started a World War II in the house. And she said, this isn't going to do. She said, I'm coming back tomorrow. And she brought me a whole bunch of clothes, and she dyed my hair and she cut it, and we started spending time together. And she took me to her house, and I met her new fiance, who is now her husband, and got to see my grandson, and we started spending time together. And she said, Mom, Ethan and I talked about it. Just after a couple of weeks, she said, we want you to come and live with us. So she says, it's my turn to take care of you. You took care of me all my life. It's my turn to take care of you. You need to be taken care of. We need to get you to the dentist and get you some dentures and, and all this. And so all those things started happening. And, I kept up with going to the psychiatrist, and I moved in with my daughter. We got me some dentures, and I could smile again and not be embarrassed. And I wasn't drinking, so that was good. I was still smoking my cigarettes or whatever, but the mental health thing was still not right. And I started self-harming. I started cutting myself and burning myself with cigarettes. I have scars all over me from doing that. It was kind of like the eating disorder. It was something I had control over, and something that hurt worse than what was hurting in my heart and what was hurting in my head, because I still had never, confronted my brother about anything he did. And I still had not really talked about all the abuse that I had gone through with anyone, except really my daughter. And I had all this loss from my parents and losing my children that I hadn't seen. And Liana was back in touch with her dad, and she had seen Kaylee, Michael, and Alex. And, she was just like, we're going to get it to the point where you get to see your kids again, Mom. We're going to fix all this. And so we started working on all those things, and I got to talk to Kaylee on the phone. Alex didn't want to talk to me, but I did get to talk to Kaylee on the phone. So I guess she would have been almost 16 at that point, but she was 15. They brought Michael over to see me. Mickey has since remarried. He pretty much got married a few months after he took the kids and left me. He got married to this woman named Amanda, who's their stepmom, and I commend her because she's been a good mom to them. They call her mom. They don't. She's not stepmom. She's mom, because they've been with her since they were 5 and 4. but anyway, they brought Michael over to my daughter's house, and I got to see Michael. Kaylee and Alex, they did not want to have me see them yet because they didn't know if I was really, mentally strong enough to do that. And they weren't sure, that Kaylee and Alex were ready for that either, because Amanda is really the only mom they remember. I mean, they have some vague memories of me, but not very much. They have pictures now, but anyway, so we were living in South County, and I started self-harming, like I said. And my daughter quickly saw it and knew what I was doing. And she said, Mom, get a grip. You got to get a handle on this. I changed my meds again. But the bipolar medication was still not right, wasn't the right one. And I was still getting manic. And when I got manic, I would just get a knife out and, cut on myself until I bled a little bit, or I'd go outside. We all smoked outside. So I'd take my cigarette and burn a hole in my arm. And and then I would feel better and go back inside and act like nothing happened. And, I wasn't doing therapy at that point. I was just doing meds because there wasn't anybody near us that was offering therapy. I was not crazy. I had to change psychiatrists because I changed insurance providers, and I did not like the psychiatrist that I had. She put me on Latuda, I think, which was one of the newer, back then it was one of the newer bipolar medications, and it made me feel weird. I felt very unstable on it, and I think that's part of why, I don't think it wasn't handling the manic part of me at all. No. And we ended up moving to the country out here where I live now. But I mean, I was still living with my daughter and she and Ethan got married, and they had my other grandson, and I lived with them there for a few months. And then February of 2024, I had decided in February, I wasn't going to take these meds anymore. I was done with them. They weren't working. So I just went off my meds, but didn't tell anybody. And I got so low and so manic that February 12th, I think it was, in the morning, it was on a Saturday. My daughter was at work. She worked at a bar, or she was at work, and Ethan was home with the two boys. And I went in the kitchen, and I had intended to just go self-harm. So I got a knife, and all I was going to do was self-harm. But I went out into the woods. They had 2 acres of woods, and I went, probably about almost an acre in to the woods. And it's February, so it's freezing cold. It was below zero. I don't remember the exact temperature. Freezing cold, snow all over the ground. I was in my pajamas, my slippers and socks, and my coat. I don't think I even took gloves. And I was just going to go in the woods and self-harm a little bit where nobody would see me and come back in. Like I said, I was off my meds. Well, I sat down under this tree, and it was pretty dark in the woods, and I just started, this time instead of just cutting, I was always cutting like my arms or my legs. This time I was like, I'm just going to slice my wrist a little bit. And that first cut wasn't enough. And I just kept cutting. And I cut and I cut and I cut, and I severed 3 tendons. And I started bleeding to death. And I felt very cold, and it got very dark. And I was like, okay, I'm dying. This is good. This is the end. This is what I wanted. It's over with. And it was like a frenzy took over me with that cutting. It was the strangest thing ever. It was absolutely terrifying. And like I said, I severed 3 tendons, and I got hypothermia, and I passed out. And I don't know how long I was out, but I came to, but I thought I was dead when I woke up. But I really had woke up, but in my mind, I had passed away, because when I looked around, it was pitch dark. And I was like, this is hell. And this is where you belong, Abby, because you're a terrible person. And it was just so quiet. And then I heard dogs barking. And we only had the one dog, and I heard whole bunch of dogs barking. And then I heard the little angel voice of my grandson, Isaac, saying, Grandma, please come home. We can't find you. And they had called, the police and an ambulance, and they were looking for me. And I heard my grandson's voice, and it really did sound like a little angel. And at that moment, I was like, I don't want to die. I have things to live for. I have people to live for. I need to live, but I couldn't move, Trav. I was frozen and so weak. I managed to get over on my stomach, and I crawled about 2 inches, which wasn't far enough for anybody to be able to see me that deep in the woods. And they're calling to me, Abby, just call out. Grandma, just call out just one time and we'll hear you. And I went to try to talk and yell, and nothing came out. Nothing came out. And I closed my eyes and I said, God, please give me my voice. I want to live. And I managed to scream out, I'm here, one time, and they heard me. And I coded in the ambulance 3 times. They thought I was going to lose my wrist completely, but the surgeon was amazing, and he repaired all 3 tendons. I can't play piano anymore, so that's the sad part about the whole piano thing. I can't play the keyboard anymore, but I can carry things. I can zip and button, and I did physical therapy and things. I went right from surgery and recovering from surgery there for about a week to the behavioral health unit, and I was there for 2 weeks, and that's where I met my best friend Scott, the one that recently passed away. I got a whole new doctor, the right medication finally, and talked about everything awful that had ever happened to me with the people there. About everything awful. Got it all out. Just got it all out, and got excellent help. And it was, they put me in touch with community and long-term care psychiatry, and I got a wonderful psychiatrist and therapist through them. But we decided as a family, because I had terrorized my poor grandson, Isaac, that it would be best if I went back home to my house and didn't continue to live with them, at least until I was, back on my feet and solid, because I scared the living crap out of my grandson, made him very sad. So that meant going back to live where my son had trashed my home. There was just, trash everywhere, and all he was doing was drinking, smoking his marijuana, gaming. He wasn't paying the bills. There was, a couple $1,000 where they were close to turning electricity off, and I had to, reach out to my brother again and ask for help. And he hired a cleaning team, and he said, you need to tell Joseph to go. So I told Joseph, you're not being responsible. You're not taking care of my home. You're being disrespectful of me, because he didn't want me to come back to the house. He wanted to keep living he was suffering from depression, and, he wasn't taking care of himself. And, his girlfriend and his daughter had left. He was still seeing his daughter, but he had broken up with his girlfriend, and he was just a mess himself. And he cussed me out a lot, and he'd yell at me a lot. And he said, I don't want you here. And I'm like, well, I'm here. This is my home. It's not yours. And I finally just told him he had to go.
And that's Mickey's son, right? Too?
Yeah, they're all Mickey's children. All of them.
All right. Okay.
So my son left. My aunt and my brother both, helped me pay bills and catch up on everything. I was my aunt took me to therapy every other week. She's my psychiatrist every month. And she took me to the grocery store, and Liana would come check on me, and she, bring the grandkids to see me, because I wasn't really in. It took a little while, but then, she was bringing them around again, or she'd, come get me, and I'd go out and spend the day with them. So I wasn't cut off from them. She was still right there for me. She was 100% supportive. But my son refused to speak to me ever again and told me I would never see my granddaughter ever again. And to this day, he still won't speak to me. It's been 4 years and I still haven't seen my granddaughter. So that's pretty heartbreaking for me.
Hope he's doing okay, though. I pray.
He's in touch with Ethan, my son-in-law. They're still friends. And so Ethan checks on him and he's doing fine. He's working for a cell phone company for the towers. He repairs all the wires and things. He's living in Troy, Missouri, and he still has a daughter, and he's doing all right. He's got a car and he's paying his bills, and he doesn't want anything to do with me.
Okay.
And he won't let me see my granddaughter.
I pray that comes.
What?
I'll pray that comes around.
I pray about it all of the time.
Sure.
And my daughter says he doesn't deserve to be back in my life because she's pretty mad at him still. But I would like to, be reunited with all of my kids. So it turned out that, when I went back to the house in Kirkwood, Mickey started letting Alex and Kaylee come see me because Liana said, that'll help Mom heal the most. You let her see the kids again. And they wanted to see me and talk to me. And I talked on the phone with them, and they had asked for pictures of them when they were little. And of course I had all those because their dad didn't take any of those when he left. So I gave them pictures and things. And then they started coming to visit me a couple times a week because they could just walk to my house. So I got to get Kaylee and Alex back in my life. I still only have partial custody of them, but, I don't, they're 17 or 18 and 19 now. I don't really need to be worrying about custody anymore. And I have good relationship with both, especially with my Kaylee. So that's great. After I'd been home for, I want to say about 9 months, Amanda, Mickey's wife, went to him and said, I'm done raising Michael. I can't do it anymore. He's severely autistic, nonverbal, had a lot of behaviors. He has an eating disorder. He doesn't like to eat very much. And, of course he can't talk. And she just was done. She said, I'm done. I'm going to leave you if you don't put him in a group home. Mickey didn't want to put him in a group home because, there's a lot of sad stories and scary stories about group homes. There's some good ones too, but we always hear about the bad ones. And so he was talking to Leon about it, and he said, I'm thinking about asking your mom, would she take Michael? And I would, give her some money every month, for him. And if she would try and just see if she could take him, because I don't want to put him in a group home. That I'm not going to lose my wife, which is nuts. I would lose my partner before I would lose my child, but I guess Amanda was more important. So at any rate, it all worked out for the best because then Michael started coming to see me. And after about 2 weeks, I guess, of him coming to see me, he spent the night for the first time, and he loved it. He had the whole house to himself, and he really liked it. And so then Mickey came to me and he said, I'll give you X amount of dollars. And if you will, let Michael come and you'll take care of him full time. He said, I think it would be good for you. I think it would give you, sense of purpose, and it will help you heal, And so I prayed about it, and I had started kind of drinking again, not heavily to the point where I couldn't function or anything, but I was having a couple glasses of wine every night. And, I always had a bottle on hand. I wouldn't say I really had a problem, in the sense that it wasn't stopping me. I was still paying my bills and being responsible, and it wasn't, messing with my meds. I didn't drink enough for it to mess with my meds or anything, but it was in the back of my mind. Why am I doing this? Why am I wasting my money? I don't need this anymore. And so when Michael did move in with me, I was like, okay, I need to not, buy this alcohol anymore. But I had no idea. I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the knowledge. I had no idea what to do about it, how to stop, because I'd go for a couple of days without buying it, and then I'd slip and I'd buy some and have a glass, And I talked to my aunt about it, and she said, you need to go to God with it, Abby. That's the only answer. It's the only way. She said, you can't go to AA or, put yourself in in for like a rehab thing because you got Michael now. She's like, you're going to have to rely on God to get you through this. And she was absolutely right. Love my aunt's pieces. And so April 17th of 2023, I went to get my wine out of the fridge where it was chilling. And I looked at the bottle, and then I looked at Michael, and then I got my phone out and I looked at pictures of my grandkids of Kaylee and Alex. And I put the wine down, and I did something I should have done a long, long time ago. I literally got on my hands and my knees and closed my eyes and got very quiet with God. And I said, God, if you will take the desire for alcohol away from me, I will never not turn to you again. When I in need of you, I will learn to always rely on you and not rely on anything in the physical world to get me by anymore. And I got up and I felt this warmth come over me and this total peace. And I took the lid off that wine, I dumped it out, put it in the trash, and I never bought anymore. And I never had the desire for it. I didn't have any cravings for it. It was just gone. God completely took it away.
Wow.
June, we moved out here of last year, and I said, well, I'm still not completely relying on God if I'm taking all these medications for my mental health. So that was the next thing I tackled, and I worked on it diligently. I prayed, and I prayed every day to know that, God was in control of my thinking, not this illness of depression and bipolar and whatever label you want to put on it. And I started first by getting rid of the PTSD medication for the nightmares. And I just started saying prayers every night before I would go to sleep. God, be with me when I rest tonight. Give me a peaceful sleep. As peacefully as you can have with a kid who has insomnia, let's put it that way.
Sure.
But, not have these jarring nightmares anymore. And the nightmares within a couple of days just stopped, and I haven't had a single one since, and it's been almost 6 months now. So about 5 months ago, I stopped all of my mental health medications, and I was not afraid at all. I will honestly tell you, I knew God had it. I knew God had me because he took that desire for alcohol away. I knew this was nothing compared to that.
Yeah.
And I have been medication free, and I'm not going to therapy anymore. I do my own church. I do my own, I do all my online recovery. I reached out first, I think, Against the Odds with Phil Tyler. That was the first ministry on Facebook I joined, and then GBR was next. And between those two, Phil does daily morning sermons. So I started watching those every day and looking at the posts on GBR, watching what's going on with that, joined a couple other groups, and just started getting all the support I needed, spiritually that way. And I've always had my aunt and my good friend Ann. They're both Christian Zionists, and I am not a Christian Zionist. I'll make that very clear, but they have good faith, and they've had a lot of good healings in their life, and they're powerful prayer warriors. Both of them are. And when I need extra support, they shoot me Bible verses and songs. And so, yeah, that's pretty much that.
Man.
So the issue with my brother, this is my thing with the forgiveness with my brother.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that my brother was married for a while and had a daughter who now won't speak to him, and he's divorced and everything. And his own daughter won't even speak to him anymore. But when he was married and my little niece was first born, he and the wife split up, and the wife moved back to St. Louis because my brother was in Washington, D.C. at that point. And the ex-wife, and I, we were friends, friendly, but we wanted the cousins to know each other. So we were having play dates. And one day at the play date at her house, she said to me, out of the blue, Abby, why does your brother wake up in the middle of the night and say, Abby, just tell me no, just tell me to stop? And then he screams. So I know that's what he was talking to. And I didn't answer, I just said, that's none of your business. Of course, I don't know what you're talking about, kind of thing. So I know it plagues him. I know he has great guilt over the situation.
Yeah.
But what my brother has done is, he paid for that attorney to try to help me get my kids back. Then Mickey tried to take my home from me because he wanted to live there with the kids. So my brother put that first home in Kirkwood in his living trust, so Mickey could never touch it. So then when we needed this house out here, he put the home in his name as well. So my home is always protected. It will never be taken from me. And he also pays my homeowner's insurance, and he pays all the taxes on my house, and he pays for any repairs either house has ever needed. So I believe in his way, he's trying to make up for what happened. He's never, I've come to terms with the fact he is never going to admit that that's what he did, because I did write him a letter one time and confront him about it. And he told me that I was delusional and he had no idea what I was talking about. And that never happened. So I know he's never going to admit to it, to me. But I feel like he's trying his best to be a good big brother and be protective of me and of Michael too. Now, because everything he does for our home, of course, takes care of Michael too. So I just feel like he was a confused teenager whose parents never talked to him about all those sexual urges and all that kind of stuff. And I think he didn't know what to do with any of it. And he just got curious, and I was just there. I just was the victim of it. And he didn't do it because he hated me. He didn't do it because, and I think he justified it. We weren't biologically related. You know what I mean? So it wasn't incestuous. So I think that's how he justified it. But I'm never, and I've had to just say to myself, and I honestly, I'm not angry at him anymore. I've had to let that go, because if I let that anger be with me every day, I'm not peaceful, and I have to be peaceful to take care of Michael.
Sure. It's subconscious. I mean, if he's like, saying that out in his sleep and everything, like it's in there. He might not have the conscious memory of that.
Right.
But yeah, and I can't ever claim how God forgives people, but I would think that would have to be something that he would have to somehow realize and offer an apology for out loud for his. I mean, it can't be removed from him, from the subconscious or whatever, right, because he's not offering that up. And
I feel bad for him.
I pray for his soul. Like I feel like he's already. I mean, the blood on the cross is sufficient for all, but unless you're confessing your sins and are able to, I mean, I'm not. I don't know about that, but it seems like he's doing subconscious. Yeah, that's what big brothers do. They want to help out and pay for things, but it seems like there's a little extra motivation in there for him. Yeah. And that's coming from a subconscious. I mean, I would have to pray that someday, I would like him to find peace about it. Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say it might be very difficult for you too. And I mean, who knows, but for you to get to a forgiving place before he's ready to, I think that may have to work like that.
Well, I do forgive him. I'm not angry anymore. Yeah. I'm really not. And I don't carry it with me. I don't have the nightmares about it anymore. I don't carry it with me. It's not a scar I carry anymore. I've let it go, and I forgive that little boy because he was confused and tortured about something.
I mean, right. And
I feel sad for him.
Sure. I mean, and if that ever happens where he contacts you and
About,
hey, I'm going to talk to you about something, you're probably going to know what that is.
yep.
So, I mean, I would think
I'll
I
be
would
strong
never, I
enough.
would
I'll be
never say
ready.
never because it would be huge for him. It would,
Yes. It would be very freeing for him. I really, because he's never gone on and remarried, and he has no contact with his daughter. She won't talk to him, because they had a falling out, and so I feel sad for him.
I just pray God will move in his life and just
I do
bring
too.
healing to everybody, the daughter, you, him. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody, no matter what, nobody deserves to hurt somebody or put their sin on somebody else, but everybody deserves to be free from that bondage, chains, and they deserve healing. That's ultimately, I mean, a multitude of reasons, but I mean, Christ went on that cross so we could be forgiven and heal and be free and not carry that. The only person that wants him to carry that weight around is the devil.
Exactly.
No one else on earth would want somebody else to not be free of that. There is no unforgivable sin. I mean, other than I think it's blasphemy to Christ and having a reprobate mind. But yeah, I would hope and pray that moment would come for him. I mean, it would be very heavy, but very necessary, I think. And I think it would free him up to just, live better.
Yeah. But I would love for him to be free of it.
Yes.
I know that he lives with it. I know he lives with it every day. I mean, he has a girlfriend now, and I've never met her or anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if he still has those bad dreams and, she hears him, wake up and do the same, because it can't be gone because it's not been rooted out,
I pray that moment comes, and I think I'm going to believe that it will, for him and for his sake and soul. But this is your on the spot, your testimony. How you feel?
I feel good. I feel like I got some stuff out. I mean, I left some things out, but maybe we'll do another one sometime. But
maybe. Yeah. I mean, I was all set to ask you some questions, but I mean, the way you just how you took us through it in a timeline fashion and everything. I mean, you did it. Like I don't want to jump in here too many times, and you pretty much
my favorite. I do want to put in there that my favorite Bible verse that was my dad's was Philippians 4 verse 13, that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. He said that to me when I was getting ready to give birth to my son Joseph and had all those hours of labor, and that has always been my go-to verse. I can do all things. And it's not me doing it, what I mean? But I can do all things because I got Jesus right there. We got God, and you got Jesus right there beside me.
Come on. I mean, and listen, I don't want to put too much on you with this, but I think there's not a person watching that would disagree. Just a huge inspiration to so many people. I mean, to each their own, and then God's timing with each person. But I mean, to be free of alcohol, to be free of all the medications.
Yep.
To still reconciling and reunions still happening, and there's room for more around the corner.
Yeah.
You just got to a point, and I mean, I believe God will put psychiatrists and doctors and whoever in people's paths for specific reasons. Maybe a reason more than what you think you're even there for.
Sure.
But at a certain point, I just feel, in my own experience, I'll say opinion, but I think it's a fact, believe it to be, there's got to be a point where it's just you and God, and that's all you had to rely on. And
exactly.
He had his hand on your life many times. Yeah. I don't mean to say it like this, but you shouldn't have
made it.
Survived that night in the woods.
There's no logical explanation for that.
Just the temperature alone should have.
And coding 3 times in the ambulance. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's all God. So, a lot of terrible things have happened, a lot of trauma, a lot of heartache, a lot of bad stuff happens. Some tough choices, whatever. But You're here now feeling the way you feel because God's written you through this. Your
And it's working
story.
in Michael's life too. You know, Michael, he may not speak, but he was on a lot of medications, and he is off all the mental health medications now. He only takes clonidine now for the insomnia, and it just calms him down enough that he can actually get. Some nights he actually sleeps 8 hours, and most nights he only sleeps 2 or 3. But he's off all those other ones, and he is a very he went from, you know, he was on several meds for many years, and he had a lot of he would hit me and jump up and down, and you know, when we first moved here, he put 4 different holes in my walls, throwing himself back against the walls. But it's been 6 months now, not one meltdown. He doesn't cry. He's not throwing himself against the walls anymore, and he takes magnesium and clonidine and some melatonin, and he doesn't take anything else. He's come real far, and God's done that too. So
that's a reciprocal effect.
And my daughter is starting to. She wanted a prayer journal for Christmas, so I got her one, and she writes in her prayer journal and reads the quotes every day, and she talks about God. My oldest daughter does, and I never thought that you know, she would be talking to me about God, because you know, she grew up with my parents talking about God to her all the time, and she has very good memories of all that, and so it's pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that curiosity keeps growing. It usually does. And you can grow up with parents that are into God and go to church and all this, but it comes down to a genuine, unique, and personal relationship with Christ. And I mean, God bless parents and everybody else who's, you know, will fill the house with church music and take you to church and prayer, you know, pray at the dinner table and all that stuff, which is a lost tradition and art at this point. But it still comes down to that person at some point in their life, for whatever reason, just putting their head back and looking to the sky. And
getting down on their knees.
That's instinctually in us to be like, for whatever reason, at least you're acknowledging him. You know what I mean? Even if you're mad, you're acknowledging God. You're going to him with that. And I'm not saying that's the best way to always go to God, but he loves the fact that we go to him. Yeah. And I hope that curiosity keeps growing for her. And I mean, all you have to do is just keep talking about Christ and sharing your story more.
Just keep planting some seeds.
Plant the seeds. Absolutely. Abigail,
and I want to say to anyone that's listening right now, if you're struggling with anything, I may not always respond right away, but my inbox is always open, and you can reach out, and I'll pray with you. I'll listen to you. So just reach out. Don't suffer alone.
No, look, God had me, I feel, start this group over a couple of years ago when it was called Recovery in Action. And she's just was, I swear, I'll say it till the day I die and beyond, that he told me to change the name to God-Based Recovery. And then I was like, okay. And then it did what it did. And it's let me meet so many awesome people.
I remember distinctly putting in, after I joined the ATO, you know, Against the Odds Ministry with Phil Tyler, I remember putting in my little search bar, God-Based Recovery, because I wanted to be in another group that, you know, I wanted something to pop up on my feed besides ATO, and there, lo and behold, was the group GBR.
And specifically name that. See, I feel like I'm not smart enough
to do that.
So God's like, here's a really good name. It's what it really should be above all, and also it's really easy to search up.
Yep.
That's all him. I mean, I had Recovery in Action, which is okay.
Yeah.
But for that kind of a shift, that I don't think I would have came up with that on my own. So I mean, I give God all the credit. I have since this day. We haven't had a whole lot of malarkey in the group, and I mean, it does what it does. The people make the group what it really is. So yeah, I'm just blessed to have people like you here in it, and I think there's just great years to come for you, for Michael, for your entire family, for all your kids. I would love to see someday you and all your kids with a group picture. Even the one who won't talk to you, he'll come around one of these days.
I hope so. He's 32. He's getting old.
Joseph will come around. Who knows? Maybe even Mickey will call you up and apologize one of these days.
No, he's still a narcissist. He's not an addict anymore. Well, he still smokes marijuana, but he's still a narcissist, and he verbally abuses his wife that he has now. He's never hit her, but that I'm aware of. I think we don't know. I don't think she's a pretty tall girl and pretty big girl. I think she'd probably knock him out. He always towered over me, but
well, I'll tell you what, God can sit you down real quick. So I mean, time
into that.
Time will really soften that heart too, in a way. So me and my wife both, thank you so much. Deb
God bless recovery and this group. And I'm excited to be going to some of the meetings now. I can't always get to them all, but I'm excited that I've come to a couple now, and they're just good. Anybody that wants a good group, just come on in. They're wonderful.
Absolutely. We love seeing you in those meetings, and your feedback and your shares have been awesome. So we're always wanting you in there whenever you can make it.
Yeah.
I would love for you to share a meeting eventually someday if you're ever up to
that.
I
think that's a distinct possibility of something that I can do.
I would love that. Open invite. You just let us know.
Okay.
Keep doing what you're doing, and keep letting God do what He's doing.
Yep. Gonna let Him lead. Gonna let Him lead.
Any last words you want to leave everybody with? And
just God bless everybody. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. I'll go back and read comments probably tomorrow because Michael's over there passed out on the couch. He fell asleep. I'm not strong enough to carry him, so I'm just gonna take his little iPad away and turn the lights off and let him sleep there. He doesn't usually fall asleep this early. I guess I bored him to death.
You found a new trick.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody, and I appreciate the opportunity to share.
Would you pray us out, please, Abby?
I will. I certainly will. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for leading me to share my testimony with others. I pray that even just that one soul that needed to hear just one thing I had to say tonight heard what they needed to hear and touches and changes their life in a most profound way. I pray that, anyone that's struggling with anything, but specifically, the issues that I brought up today, that, they can turn to you, and they can turn to members of our group or someone dear in their life that they know they can trust and get the support that they need and feel comforted, and they're not, feeling any triggering or any sense of sadness over anything that was discussed tonight. I want to thank you for Deb and Trav and for this group. I pray that you bring blessings to everyone in the group and to anyone watching this. Please cover them with your wings and shelter them. And I hope everyone has a peaceful evening. And we just love you, Father. Thank you for all of your blessings and your gifts. And I pray all this in your Son, Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Love you guys. Thanks for listening.
We love you. Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody for the kind words that tuned in. And everybody's going to be watching this after we post it. It's going to be out there. And just thank you so much. That was
You're welcome.
It was extraordinary. You did very, very well. All glory to God. But you did very well.
All glory to God. My friend Ann said, God will be with your mouth. And I was like, okay.
I could tell about 5 minutes into it. I was just like, all right, put these aside. And you covered every question I had anyway. So less of me, more of you, more of what God has done. And we can't thank you enough. We appreciate it. This has been Abigail Crandell, everybody, Ambassador Abby. And she is off the spot. Thank you so much, sis.
You're welcome. Love you.
Love you too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.